Major League Baseball has blessed us with some of the greatest success stories in sports history. From those hitting moonshots to the aces on the mound. But every now and then, there have been a number of ex-MLB players whose lives have been scarred by their troubled pasts. From domestic violence to the unthinkable act of murdering one's own in-laws.
Showing someone with their face covered approaching the couple's
These
home.
are the stories pro baseball wants you to forget.
The all-star closer for the Pittsburgh Pirates is in trouble with the law. Felipe Vasquez was arrested this morning on charges of computer pornography and solicitation of a child.
Ese día, Ugueth Urbina, junto con los Marlins, se coronaba campeón. Vivía el momento más alto de su carrera, cuando lo acusaron ante la policía de intentar matar a 4 de sus empleados.
He was a big league pitcher back in the day, drafted in the first round. But after his baseball career, the breaks didn't go his way. Now, he's under arrest, accused of killing his wife's father and the attempted murder of her mother.
Culture, Major League Baseball franchises, the media, there were a lot of forces at play that enabled him, as you say, to get second and really third, fourth, fifth chances when, again, a fairly simple records request would have revealed some very disturbing behavior.
There is some breaking news of more trouble for Pirates pitcher Felipe Vasquez.
The first name to feature is that of Felipe Vasquez, a former MLB pitcher who traveled a dark and ugly road before he was eventually caught. Vasquez, who also went by Felipe Ramiro, originated from Venezuela, born in the city of San Felipe in 1991. He found his way to pro baseball in America in 2008, when he was signed as an international free agent by the Tampa Bay Rays. Making his first major league debut in 2015, his rise would be significant, making his downfall one of the most high profile in the history of the game. It was in Pittsburgh that he would really make his mark during his playing days. That season, he was throwing anything up to 102 miles per hour. His performance in 2017 earned him a 4-year, $22.5 million contract with the Pirates. Bleacher Report ranked him the 4th best closer in all of baseball, and over the next 2 seasons, enjoyed back-to-back All-Star appearances and was one of the league's best pitchers. However, his career wasn't completely clear of controversy. He was ejected for his role in a mass brawl against the Cincinnati Reds, amidst the fight that broke out between Red pitcher Amir Garrett and the entire Pirates dugout. He later engaged in a fight with fellow pitcher Kyle Crick in the clubhouse, reportedly sparked by a disagreement over music. The altercation resulted in Crick sustaining a broken finger, ending his season and requiring surgery. Minus a couple of minor incidents, Vasquez did enjoy a couple of seasons at the top. He was praised league-wide for his closing ability and appeared to be on a trajectory that would see him claim a primary position among closers for years to come. Unfortunately, 2019 would be the beginning of his demise. Vasquez was placed on the MLB's restricted list on September 17, 2019, following his arrest. The charges would condemn Vasquez and his career in the MLB for good. The Venezuelan-born pitcher was accused of having a sexual relationship with a girl who originated from Lee County, Florida, which had started when she was just 13 years old. The relationship allegedly began in 2017, which would have meant Vasquez was around 25 years old at the time. The charges were serious, alleging that he not only had a sexual relationship with the girl, but also sent her explicit photos and videos of himself. Just hours later, he faced charges of statutory sexual assault, unlawful contact with a minor, corruption of minors, and indecent assault of a person under 16 years old in connection with another incident in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. Vasquez quickly confessed to his involvement in the accusations, acknowledging a sexual encounter with the girl in 2017. He further admitted to sending nude photos and videos, leading to additional charges. Throughout his arrest process, an additional 21 felony charges were brought against him. These included 10 counts of unlawful sexual contact with a minor, 10 counts of child and 1 count of corruption of a minor. Facing a significant legal ordeal, he was denied bail in 2019. According to a report from the Lee County Police, Vasquez had continued to have a sexual relationship with the girl, who was aged 15 at the time of the investigation, sending her suggestive texts that they would meet for sexual activity when the baseball season was over. Pirates president Frank Conley weighed in on the matter at the time of his arrest. Today we were made aware of an active law enforcement investigation involving Felipe Vasquez and his subsequent subsequent arrest. We take this matter, and these charges in particular, extremely seriously. We have informed the Commissioner's Office of the investigation and arrest. The Commissioner's Office will immediately place Felipe Vasquez on administrative leave. Pursuant to the joint MLB-MLBPA policy, we need to be respectful to all involved in the ongoing legal proceeding. As a result, the organization, our staff, and players cannot comment any further at this time. Fans of the Pirates and Major League Baseball were quick to criticize what he did, and he suddenly lost his baseball career. Vasquez was now considering possibly going to prison for 2 to 4 years, but he wasn't going down without a fight. His primary defense centered around his claim that he didn't know the girl was underage, but considering she was nowhere near 21, his argument didn't hold much weight. Even if she hadn't been 13 years old, he was still crossing serious boundaries and attempted to fight back when caught. Some believe that perhaps the fight in the clubhouse stemmed from the allegations. That fight with Cal Crick took place on September 10, 2019. He was arrested 7 days later. Crick was quickly heralded as a hero for bravely sacrificing his hand and the remainder of his baseball season to confront Vasquez and punch him in the face for what he had done. The fight had resulted in Vasquez requiring stitches, which does seem like a hefty blow over a dispute centered around the music in the clubhouse. Allegations of sexual assault of a minor would certainly offer a more plausible explanation. Suddenly, one of the best relievers in baseball was headed for a very different life. He was found guilty on multiple counts in 2021, with an eventual sentence of 2 to 4 years in prison, followed by 2 years probation. He appealed on the grounds of 4 instances, with his main defense being that there wasn't enough evidence to disprove his mistaking of the young girl's age. He denied knowing she was a minor during his trial, but lost his appeal in March of 2023. In December that year, a photo surfaced of the former MLB All-Star being escorted in handcuffs onto a plane. He was deported back to Venezuela by immigration agents, with a statement noting, "Rivera Blanco's removal demonstrates ERO Philadelphia's commitment to protecting U.S. persons from predators regardless of their public persona or status." His current whereabouts remain a mystery. Ugueth Urbina. But for all of their triumphs, the name Ugueth Urbina, much like that of Felipe Vasquez, casts a dark cloud over Venezuelan baseball. Urbina made his MLB debut in 1995 as a middle receiver with the Montreal Expos. He made 4 starts that year, but would cement his place in the rotation the following season. He was ascending through the ranks and growing in popularity among Expos fans. He transitioned to a role as a closing pitcher in 1997, and by 1998, was voted an All-Star for the first time in his career. The Venezuelan pitcher enjoyed a career in the majors that lasted over a decade, including a second All-Star appearance in 2002 while playing for the Boston Red Sox. 1 year later, he helped the Florida Marlins win the 2003 World Series over the New York Yankees, appearing in 10 games during the postseason with a 1-0 record, 4 saves, and a 3.46 ERA. His most important inning was his appearance in the bottom of the 9th in Game 7 of the NLCS against the Chicago Cubs. The Marlins fought back from 3-1 down in the series, and it was Urbina who forced the final flyout to send them to the World Series. Sadly, life certainly wasn't straightforward for the pitcher, who saw his mother kidnapped in 2004 and held for ransom back in his native country. It was clearly a targeted kidnapping, demanding $6 million from Urbina and his family for his mother's release. She was eventually rescued by a specialist anti-kidnapping unit no less than 5 months after the kidnapping. The exchange of gunfire left one of her kidnappers dead, while many others were able to flee the scene. During the turbulent tenure of Ugueth's mother's capture, he had been urged not to give in to the financial demands and refused to pay the ransom as a result. When she was rescued, she claimed the most hurtful thing was those imprisoning her claiming her son didn't love her because of his decision not to hand over the money. However, one would typically hope that the worst headline in their life would be the kidnapping of their own mother. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for Ugueth Urbina, who completely lost his composure over a year later in 2005 while on one of his own properties. He made his final appearance in Major League Baseball on October 2nd of 2005. He spent the final few months of his pro career with the Phillies following a June trade, and only days after the season ended, things would go horribly wrong. His family ranch was located south of the capital capital city of Venezuela, Caracas. With the baseball season over, Urbina was back in his home nation at the ranch when a dispute over a gun took place. What followed is now considered to be one of the most dangerous and evil crimes in baseball history. Allegedly infuriated by the dispute, Urbina turned to a machete, threatening the lives of 5 workers who worked on the family ranch. The report claimed that Urbina joined in with a group of men attacking the workers, threatening them with machetes and pouring gasoline on them in attempted murder. What began as a disagreement involving a handgun ultimately ended in a violent crime, which would redirect the path of a former MLB pitcher's life for years to come. His lawyer, a man by the name of Jose Luis Tamayo, claimed that the arrest was inexplicable. The defense claimed that Urbina was sleeping while the incident took place and had no part in the violence. Two very different sides to the story collided, with the victim suggesting he was wielding a machete, pouring gasoline on the shocked workers, and threatening their lives on his property. In 2007, he was found guilty of the attempted murder of all 5 of the individuals and sentenced to 14 years in prison in Venezuela. His agent, one of the most recognized in the baseball industry, immediately jumped to his defense. Peter Greenberg believed Urbina to be innocent. He said, "We're hopeful that the judicial process will exonerate Ugueth. I firmly believe he's innocent." The Venezuelan justice system held a different opinion, leading to Urbina's imprisonment. He spent over 7 years behind bars before being released on December 24, 2012, having served slightly more than half of his sentence. After serving over 7 years of a 14-year sentence, he returned to baseball in Venezuela. At the age of 38, he took the field for the first time post-prison to feature for the Lions of Caracas. Urbina had hoped to return to the major league in North America. The ex-closer never made it back to the MLB, perhaps due to the allegations of a crime too dark to come back from. It's another baseball career tainted by crimes that overshadowed anything he did on the field. As for his innocence, that would be up for debate. The crowd is undoubtedly divided, but with so little information about the real story of what happened that day, Urbina's alleged crime and ensuing sentence remains a blemish on the resume of baseball in the majors. While some may question Urbina's case, there's no one defending Milton Bradley, who is widely regarded as one of the nastiest players to ever feature in pro baseball. Bradley was born in California, attending Long Beach Poly, before being drafted by the Montreal Expos in 1996. Strangely enough, he and Urbina were teammates for a couple of seasons in the early 2000s. He was a switch-hitting outfielder who spent over a decade in Major League Baseball, despite bouncing around a couple of teams. Over the course of his career, Bradley was traded from the Expos to the Cleveland Indians, then to the Dodgers, the Oakland A's, and the Padres, before eventually hitting free agency in 2007. Some would say he very quickly outstayed his welcome, and his track record in pro baseball was just a small indication of the man he would become away from the game. In the 2007 to 2008 free agency period, he chose to join the Texas Rangers, during which he made his sole All-Star appearance in the majors. He had 133 hits that season, with a career-high 77 RBIs and 22 home runs. It was the only season he had 20 plus homers in his career. His career was undoubtedly affected by constant anger issues, with warning signs that perhaps he was on the verge of doing something extremely dangerous. Former manager of the Cleveland Indians, Eric Wedge, insisted that Bradley be traded by the franchise. And while only a couple of incidents were publicly reported, he was definitely gaining a reputation as a locker room problem. The Indians traded him to the Dodgers, where several more incidents validated Wedge's decision as the correct one. During a regular season game in which he was ejected, Bradley stormed into the dugout, scuffled with manager Jim Tracy, and then tossed a ball bag out onto the field. He was suspended for 4 games. In September that season, he dropped a line drive, which caused a fan to launch a bottle at him from the stands. While of course the actions of a fan throwing anything at any professional athlete are heavily condemned, retaliating by picking up and throwing up objects back into the crowd is completely unacceptable. But that's how Bradley handled it, yelling at the fans in the process. The following day, he was suspended for the rest of the season, which led to the Dodgers suggesting anger management counseling, something that would become a common occurrence in his life. The outfielder worked on his anger issues during the off-season, but that was just the tip of the iceberg for what would be eventually uncovered. A couple of years later, in 2007, Bradley was once again involved in an altercation, this time as a member of the San Diego Padres. In what was a messy occurrence and an ugly affair for all involved, Milton Bradley would end up injured and out for the rest of the season. Home plate umpire Brian Rung reportedly told Bradley that the first base umpire, Mike Winters, had suggested he'd thrown his bat at Rung in his previous at-bat. The Padres outfielder was visibly angry about the accusation. According to both Bradley and Padres first base coach Bobby Meacham, Winters returned fire with a barrage of abuse and profanity. He then turned and charged at Winters, arms outstretched, appearing ready to knock the first base umpire off his feet. The chaos that followed involved Padres manager Bud Black trying to restrain Bradley, who was attempting to bull rush his way through the staff around him to chase down Winters. Then amidst the scuffle, Bradley went down, clutching at his knee. He torn his ACL, ending his season in less than an ideal fashion. Mike Winters was in fact suspended, with the MLB confirming the claim that he had hurled abuse at Bradley. On this occasion, perhaps he had been provoked, but these incidents kept on cropping up over the remaining years of his career. In 2008, his All-Star season, Bradley stormed the press box in an attempt to confront Kansas City Royals announcer Ryan Lefebvre, had suggested that Bradley should take a page from his teammate Josh Hamilton's book. Bradley took exception to those comments, which he had heard on the clubhouse TV, and forced his way into the press box to confront his critic. He was held back by the team GM and manager Ron Washington, and never actually found Lefebvre to speak his mind before breaking down in the clubhouse. Bradley stated, "I'm tired of people breaking me down. All I want to do is play baseball. That's it. Raise my family, raise my sons, so they've got a better life than me. I'm strong, but I'm not that strong, you know? It wears on me." His time in Chicago in 2009 was also marred by controversy and anger issues, and in September, he was suspended for the remainder of the season for publicly criticizing the Cubs organization and its environment, and suggesting that he understood why they hadn't won anything in 100 years. Just a year into signing a 3-year, $30 million contract with the ball club, he was traded to Seattle. In Seattle, it looked like he'd truly given up on his career. He wasn't chasing down fly balls, was heavily criticized by the organization for his effort and argumentative nature, and was released after a year with the team. A once promising career in the majors went sideways, marred by anger, a lack of discipline, and a bad attitude. That marked the end of his MLB career, which was filled with signs that he may have been troubled or in need of mental guidance or support while striving to compete at the highest level. Sadly, his on-field antics would pale in comparison to the things he did away from the game. The long list of domestic violence allegations and crimes are horrifying. There were stirs during his playing days. He met his first wife, Monique Williams, while playing for the Cleveland Indians in 2003, his first home in baseball, and the first team to get sick of him and ultimately trade him away. She was a community relations intern for the franchise, and Bradley started to date her. In 2005, the Redondo Beach Police in California had received 3 calls of domestic violence at Bradley's West Coast address. No charges were filed at the time, but perhaps those calls were the warning signs sadly overlooked. Monique Williams was pregnant at the time. Bradley filed for a divorce in 2006, but he never finalized the paperwork. When they married, he forcefully had Williams sign a prenuptial agreement. "You didn't think you were going to leave here without signing this." The allegations started to build up in 2011. Bradley was accused of grabbing his wife's hand and forcing it onto her own face, launching her mobile phone at the wall, and confronting her in the hallway with his forearm pressed onto her neck, pinning her against the wall. Williams suggested that Bradley took all the phones in the house and the car keys to stop her from fleeing or calling the police. If he didn't take away the phones, he would say, "Go ahead, call the police. You'll be dead by the time they get here anyway." After giving birth to their second child, his mother-in-law had come to state to help raise the child. Milton had her evicted, stating it was his home. He paid for it, and he didn't want her living there. He and Monique had argued publicly at a restaurant, after which Bradley drove 40 miles home and left his wife there. She called the police. Later that evening, the police knocked on the door, asking him if he hit her. Milton said no, and told her to stop calling the police over nothing. Right in front of the cop on the doorstep, the cop left the scene. During his final year with the Mariners, another domestic incident caused Monique to move into a hotel with her children. He had smashed her laptop, taken her phone, and once again sent a volley of verbal abuse her way in front of the children, as was often the case. She stated that right after his abusive episodes, he would often call and apologize and ask her not to leave, which was causing endless emotional stress and anxiety. She once stated that she lives in constant fear fear. Monique had been asked many times in court why she hadn't divorced Milton. She claimed she didn't get married to get divorced and was trying to make it work. But at this point, there was no salvaging the relationship. On June 3, 2013, Bradley was convicted by a jury of 9 counts of physical attacking and threatening his wife, including 4 counts of spousal battery, 2 counts of criminal threats, 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon, 1 count of vandalism, and 1 count of brandishing a deadly weapon. One of the incidents in 2011 involved him following her on the drive to school. After taking the kids to a hotel once again the night prior, he pulled up alongside her and shouted, "Bring my kids back or I'm gonna kill you," while motioning across his neck with his hand. He had previously threatened her life with a knife. Things had gotten so bad between them that Monique had hired a security guard to monitor the property while Milton was around. His 2003 sentence gave him 32 months in prison, along with 52 weeks of anger management counseling and domestic violence classes. Tragically, 2 months later, Monique Bradley died at just 33 years old, as her health was quickly deteriorating. The evidence practically concludes that her death was caused by years of mental, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of former MLB outfielder Milton Bradley. Her liver was badly damaged, and both hemorrhagic shock and cardiac arrest were listed as causes of death. It's incredibly heartbreaking that a woman who had appeared to be reaching out for help for so long endured such severe mistreatment from a much larger, stronger, and heavier athlete that it ultimately resulted in her death. A 32-month prison term hardly seems fitting for a crime of that magnitude, relentlessly beating a woman until she passed away at the young age of 33. It's these crimes and this level of emotional and physical abuse that make Milton Bradley one of the most evil players in MLB history. After her passing, while trying to negate his sentence, Bradley said, "Ray Rice slaps the hell out of a woman. You know, I didn't do that. I'm not Ray Rice. Greg Hardy beats up a woman. I didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? It's obvious to everyone this is a complete farce." He showed no remorse, no emotional damage, no signs of grief towards his ex-wife, just this unrelenting belief that he was innocent. What's worse is that he remarried and began the same cycle all over again. During his sentence and subsequent time in prison, Bradley had eventually calmed himself and vowed that he would work on becoming a better man. His initial angry stance on the entire situation hadn't worked, so he pandered to the powers that be and decided the best route forward was to start to say the right things in order to get out. He would eventually spend 15 months in prison before being released. He reportedly remarried in late 2015, early 2016 to a woman named Rachel. In April of 2018, he was arrested for spousal battery and taken into custody with a $175,000 bail. He was still on probation for his previous domestic violence crimes, in which his first wife had eventually ended up dead. This time he pleaded no contest and was sentenced to another 36 months probation with another 52 weeks of domestic violence counseling. At what point does it become clear that no amount of counseling or short-lived sentence in prison is going to stop the former baseball player from beating up his wife? To have acted so unapologetically the first time in front of his children and with a violent demeanor in the presence of police officers, and to display such a lack of empathy when she tragically dies at such a young age is appalling. Then to remarry and find himself arrested once more for spousal battery, yet still receive only a 36-month probation sentence is sheer negligence. His second wife Rachel had reportedly filed for a restraining order to keep Bradley away from her child. He then threatened to kill her in front of her mother and the child. In her request for a restraining order and complete custody of the child, Rachel said, "Every day I am living in fear. I am Mr. Bradley's punching bag that receives his erratic behavior and attacks. I am walking on eggshells daily." Milton Bradley's crimes against the women who accepted him into their lives mark a stark reminder of the dangers of domestic violence. While he has denied his involvement in such crimes against his first wife Monique, the evidence and her tragic passing stack heavily against him. He had his moments of anger and frustration in baseball, but the real darkness he possessed came out at home, and his 2 wives and their poor children paid the price for it. Danny Serafini. Unlike the previous individuals discussed, Serafini's story takes a dark turn. In October of 2023, he found himself arrested, accused in connection with the murder and attempted murder of his own father and mother-in-law. On June 5, 2021, the police were called to a Lake Tahoe home where they found Robert Spohr, a 70-year-old man, dead from a gunshot wound. His wife, Wendy Wood, had also been shot in the head but survived the attack. She was severely injured, and the gunshot wound meant that she had to have reconstructive surgery of her skull before she could relearn how to walk, talk, and eat. She was slowly recovering in a senior person's home, but tragically took her own life, riddled with grief about a year after the attack that killed her husband. The daughter of Robert Spoor and Wendy Wood, Adrienne Spoor, believed that the individuals that ultimately killed both of her parents knew them directly. In October of 2023, that prediction of hers came true. Danny Serafini, who is married to Aaron Spoor, was arrested on suspicion of murder and now faces the rest of his life in prison. Serafini was originally a first-round draft pick in 1992, selected by the Minnesota Twins as a high-regarded pitching prospect out of Junipero Serra High School in San Mateo, California. He made his major league debut in 1996, starting a game against the New York Yankees. While the former pro pitcher never made it to an all-star game, he did spend over a decade in professional baseball around the world. He spent time with the Twins, Chicago Cubs, San Diego Padres, and Pittsburgh Pirates, before pitching for the China Trust Whales, a team in the Chinese Professional Baseball League in Taiwan. Serafini struggled to establish himself in the pros. Although he signed with the Anaheim Angels and the St. Louis Cardinals in the early 2000s, he never made the roster and was released without playing a major league game for either team. But by 2013, his playing days were over. While many players spend considerable time in the game, few achieve the wealth of today's superstars. Despite playing for multiple major league teams, Danny Serafini didn't get rich from his playing days. His exact career earnings are unknown, but he lost a lot of the money he had accumulated in failed business ventures. He was far from set, and according to reports, a bar that he had opened with his wife Erin had left the couple in crippling debt. Famously featured on the show Bar Rescue, the murder of Robert Spoor and eventual death of Wendy Wood led to a conversation about a mass inheritance, which could and likely is the reason for the murders in the first not quite going to plan beyond retirement from baseball. Erin and her sister Adrienne have gone back and forth since the heinous crime was committed, with the latter suing her older sister for her involvement in the alleged crimes. Erin Spoor has not been charged with any involvement in the crime, but a friend of hers, Samantha Scott, was arrested at the same time as Serafini in connection to the murder. She has pleaded not guilty, but is suspected to have played a role in the death of the elderly couple. The report reads that the murder and attempted murder took place execution style. Both were shot in the head, and the belief is that the blood was spilled for their money. In Lake Tahoe, Robert Spoor and Wendy Wood had built a life, actively participating in the community, and amassed their family fortune through real estate. Surveillance footage shows a man in a gray hooded sweatshirt approaching the property hours before the shootings took place, and later showed the man walking up the driveway. He wore a face covering and kept the hood over his head. Law enforcement claimed that the two suspects in the murder case very clearly knew each other and the victims. It was all planned and executed in cold blood. Danny Serafini, if he is in fact the guilty party, pulled up to his in-laws' home, strolled up the driveway, and shot them both in the head from close range. To compound matters, Adrienne claimed that her caring parents were extremely proud and generous towards both her sister Erin and her husband, MLB pitcher Danny Serafini. If found guilty, Serafini will be put away for life for destroying the family that once accepted him, and doing so over money. He took his struggles as a pro baseball player hard. He once claimed that his own parents had once been so proud of him for making it to the majors, but he had since failed to hold down a job in the league time and time again. Professional fate. These are merely 4 of the darkest stories looming over Major League Baseball, yet regrettably, there are numerous others. Yet despite the success, the fame, the riches, and everything that comes with it, some still lose themselves, resorting to crime, violence, abuse, and murder.